Hello, my name is Melissa Treinkman. I'm so happy to be here today to chat with Jamie Barton. You can read more about her in Volume 82, Issue 2 of the Vocal Point column in the Journal of Singing. That's the November-December 2025 issue. Were you born with it? Your voice is incredible. Is that just natural, or did you have to work pretty hard to get it to sound the way it sounds?
You're very kind. Thank you. I was definitely somebody who was born with the natural setup, the natural resonance spaces, the voice, all of that.
Yes.
But with the vast majority, I think, of opera singers that are out there, I am one of those that absolutely had to go through training in order to understand how to wield the instrument because it's not exactly something that, everyday people don't end up singing opera on the street or something like that. They can impersonate opera, but to get that, like, I can fly over a Wagnerian orchestra kind of sound, that takes training.
Right, absolutely. No matter how talented you happen to be.
I think for the most part, I know a couple of friends and colleagues of mine who magically seem to have always had the setup. They don't have voice teachers, they do it themselves. For
Yeah.
me, I need vocal technicians to check in with. Like, I need a tune up. This thing's like a car, I got to take it into the shop every once in a while, make sure it's running as well as it can be for the age that's on it.
Yeah. Right. I love that analogy. And so it sounds like you continue to study and take lessons.
I'm a firm believer for myself in needing somebody who I trust to say, hey, I'm hearing this, let's fix it. Or, hey, this is going really well, let's develop it. Like whatever it is, having
Mhm.
somebody that I really trust outside of what I hear is so necessary, especially as a person who happens to sing heavier music,
Mm.
doing the Wagner. I love those composers very much. Wagner this is going to sound surprising to say, but his music is a bit roll out of bed and sing kind of music for me, which is
That,
amazing. And I love
that
that.
is amazing. Wow.
But when I'm having to gear my entire body to be singing over an 80-piece orchestra, I find in order to maintain flexibility and vocal health, I need something that helps balance that. For
Mm.
me, checking in with a voice teacher is a big part of it.
And if you had to kind of encapsulate how you think about vocal technique or how your voice works the best or what you're thinking about when you're singing, could you do that for us?
Man, how do I condense a graduate degree into a sentence?
Right, exactly.
In very short order, what I am hoping to do is to coordinate my breathing
Mhm.
mechanism, my entire breathing system, the support of that breathing with the resonant spaces that are necessary in a way that is the freest for
Mm.
here. I'm always looking to take away tension here,
Mhm.
support it with the breath, but to do that in a way that it's like balancing on a tightrope. I'm sure anybody who's going to be seeing this will understand what I'm saying.
Right.
But how to maintain that balance and with a voice that is, and this is for every single person who sings, the more you age, the more your body shifts, the more you're
Mhm.
going to have to recalibrate how you maintain that balance. But
Yeah.
that balance is what I'm going for the most part. There are moments in some of the places where I do extreme kind of things. Like Verdi is always going to be looking for Verdi Mezzo to do something like some massive gear shifting. Like we are
Right.
driving a sports car when we're singing that stuff. You're going
Yeah.
to have to pop out of sixth gear into second gear. Like it's going to happen. You're going to have to do some big chest stuff. You're going to have to make sure you can still get those high notes. But the way
Mhm.
you do it is that you treat those moments like they're spices, like nutmeg. Like you don't want an entire dinner of nutmeg. You just want that flavor in there. That's a part of maintaining the balance because on those nights where I've kind of overindulged in those moments, I can feel it. I
Yeah.
feel it the next day. Like
Mhm.
you can feel when it's out of balance.
What are your must-haves or things that you have to do to keep your instrument in tip-top shape?
My big ones are sleep. Sleep is a huge one for me. I'm a 9 hour a night girl,
Mm.
ideally,
Nice.
and I'm also a night owl.
Ah.
And
Yeah.
it gets bad during shows. I'm actually doing Carousel right now here in Boston.
Nice.
And I have gotten into the habit of sleeping until noon, which is not ideal for like operating in the world, but sometimes, like yesterday was the first day I had off after the opening weekend, and I didn't do anything. I just, I need that rest and that recuperation. It is a major part of me being in that balance. Of course, hydration,
Mhm.
just, and it changes where you are and
Hmm.
what season you're in. And, like if you're in New York in the wintertime, you're probably going to be staying in a building that's going to have that old steam radiator kind of heating system, which is insanely drying.
Mm.
At this point, I honestly should own stock in like humidifier companies or something like that for the number of humidifiers I've left in the wake of my career.
I love it.
But even learning that, like, if I make sure I bring a mug of tea with me when I'm walking out and about in New York, that's like a personal humidifying system. It's
Mm.
keeping everything nice and warm and, literally drinking liquid.
Mhm.
Whereas, if I'm in Houston, Texas, probably going to be fine. As long as I'm drinking like the daily recommended amount of water, there's so much humidity there that my hair is not going to look great, but my voice is going to sound amazing.
Oh,
The other
really?
thing is just masking,
Ah.
especially now past the pandemic. This year, I had a concert tour in January, and I was just terrified that I was going to get that awful like flu-like thing that was going around.
Yes.
Everybody who has it, had it for like 3 or 4 weeks,
Right. Yeah, you want to stay
so
away.
like doing everything I can to try and mitigate that, whether it be
Mhm.
masking or just leaning into my natural introvert tendencies and just staying
Uh-huh.
at home.
Right. So you're doing carousel right now. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. My first and initial love of storytelling on stage was definitely musical theater. I did community theater growing up, kind of waited until like middle school, high school area of my life to do it. But once I started doing it, I dove headfirst into it.
Mm.
Even when I was in undergrad, I was a vocal performance major, but I would spend a lot of time with the musical theater group because I was like the little nerd in the background being like, could I work on the crew? So like I got to do a few things in undergrad, but that was the last time. That was
Wow.
the last time I did any sort of musicals. And so when this offer came up and also had the name of Anne Bogart attached to it, which of course was our director for that Norma in LA,
Right.
I thought, you know what? Absolutely. 1000%. This is absolutely worth my time. I've been looking for a legit musical theater piece to be a part of. To me, it just makes a ton of sense and I love it. It's so
Do
much fun.
you?
I do.
Yeah. Tell me, is there a difference vocally? Are you approaching it as an opera singer, or have you kind of like shifted any at all to do
Yeah,
it?
I take a page out of Audra McDonald's book. To me, she is the perfect example of somebody who is classically trained and who uses that classical training to her advantage and to
Mm.
her vocal health, but also negotiates it in a way where you don't have to look at the text. It's
Mm.
so clear. And the beautiful thing is that with microphones, that is possible. There
Right.
is an edge of the volume and the power behind that classical technique that does get sacrificed, but with the help of microphones, that's not a problem. And
Right.
so what you get in return is a more broad palette of nuance. And that's really interesting to me. I've loved being able to play around in that. It's funny especially with June is busting out all over.
Yeah.
I've been it sits in a really funny key. And there are some moments that I feel like it's okay, well, I'm up here, so I'm going to have to be going into the classical for sure. And then there are other like middle voice stuff that I'm like, wow, I'm Ethel Merman right now.
Oh, I
Okay.
love it.
Actually, I managed to hear just a little clip of it online. Somebody had taken a little snippet of me singing. I'm not going to call it belt, but it's that pre-belt kind of area. And of course, we as opera singers who are so rarely mic'd, we are so used to being the ones who kind of control how the audience hears us, like
Hmm.
what the sound is. Like we have more of a hands-on control of that.
So true.
And of course, when you have a sound technician who's running the microphone system, you don't exactly know. And so
Right.
it
Good
was a
point.
real learning kind of moment for me to be able to hear that, but it was so good to be able to hear it because I was like, oh, it's a lot more seamless than I had kind of anticipated that it might be.
Oh,
It's
nice.
actually in line with all of the rest of it. I actually can take a little bit of weight out of the top, whereas I kind of felt like I needed to go. Like
Right.
I hope in future projects I can, I don't know, maybe request more time on the microphone with
Yeah.
more ability to record it and stuff like that, so I can do a little bit more of this kind of analysis. How does it sound out in the house?
I saw that you grew up in kind of a musical family, and bluegrass music was really a big part of your childhood.
Yeah, no, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. And truly the middle of nowhere. They got running water about 6 years ago, kind of middle of nowhere. Uh,
Wow, that gives you a good image of what we're talking about. I love it.
Off the grid. It's a very isolated place. I know that my family has been in that area since about the 1750s.
Wow.
So bluegrass and classic rock were
Yeah.
kind of like the two things that my parents were slash are hippies. And
Mhm.
so we listened to a ton of classic rock, and my extended family not only loved bluegrass, but would host pickins, as they call them, pickins and grinnins, because you're going to pick on the instrument and you're going to grin because it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I love that. So sweet.
And there were a ton of just amateur musicians who were in the same valley who would get together and pick. And
Oh,
anytime we had those gatherings, whereas my little brother and the rest of the kids my age were running around outside having a bunch of fun, I was that little music nerd inside sitting with the instrumentalists, like
oh,
trying to figure out how they know where the harmony's going.
yeah.
It certainly gave me an ear that has given me an advantage in this
Mm,
career. It gave me a huge advantage when I was in school, actually. The learning how to hear music,
yeah.
which that is what a lot of bluegrass is, learning how to listen to the people you're playing with to understand, okay, if first harmony is going this way, how is second harmony going to go? How can you guess where they're not going to go? How can you
Right.
kind of read their mind? That
Wow.
gave me a real advantage in oral training. So, like in
Mhm.
oral theory and stuff like that. Bluegrass was a huge part of my beginning of love of music.
I can't imagine that your parents said to you, "Hey, Jamie, do you think you might want to be an opera singer?" I mean, was that on their radar at all?
Wasn't on my radar. Even when I went into college, went in as a music ed major and I really
Right.
wanted to do musical theater.
Yeah.
But then I got in, and I'll admit that the fat phobia messaging had gotten to me. And
Mm,
we lived so far up in the country that there just wasn't the financial possibility of me taking dance classes when I was a kid. So I
right.
get into undergrad, and there is a musical theater department, but they required that you take 8 a.m. ballet class, and most of the people who were doing that came in with a dance audition. And
Yeah.
like I was just sitting there going, well, I don't dance because I'm big girls don't dance, see,
Oh,
right?
right.
As it turns out, that's a full lie, and I'm a great dancer, or
Right.
I should say I'm a great mover. I can move
Yes.
really well, but
Yeah.
that idea was in my head. And so I was like,
Sure.
well, vocal performance allows me to take acting and vocal classes and do all of that, but no dance. So let's just go for that.
Yes.
And the rest is history. So
Right. Exactly. Seems like fate, right? Yeah.
it re- I fate has stepped in my life in very clear ways.
Mm.
And that was definitely one of them.
And now you're doing musical theater anyway, right? So
It's true. It's true. I even get to throw a high kick in for Nettie in this one. So
amazing. I know you're a big advocate for diversity, inclusion. Can you tell me about what that means to you?
I say this all the time. I grew up in the middle of the country, in
Yeah.
the middle of the sticks, in a place where classical music just doesn't go, even to this day, unless I happen to be visiting my family. That's it. There are no symphonies, there are no operas. The closest ones is a community one in Rome, Georgia, which is 20 miles away.
Mm,
And then the closest professional one is down in Atlanta, which is an hour and a half and a whole bunch of gas.
yeah, sure.
And so, by every metric, I should not be doing this. I don't have the natural background set up to
Mm,
be a professional opera singer, and yet I am.
mm.
And yet I found my love for this music, and it changed my world. It changed my world when I heard classical music for the first time, or for the first time that I would really say that I clocked. I was a teenager listening to NPR late at night. I started to hear symphonies and concertos and all sorts of things that I'd never heard before. And it hooked me and had my creative brain lighting up. And so I feel not only a responsibility, but a drive to make sure that people feel welcome to explore this, welcome to come and be a part of a live event, to sit in the audience. And the fact of the matter is that for a lot of people, especially from particular socioeconomic backgrounds, they don't feel welcome. They don't feel like that is their place. If there is one message I could get across to the whole world, is that there is a place and we want you in the audience. We want you to come experience this. Is it going to be for everyone? No. I know that for sure. And I can sit here and say there's plenty of operas that are very famous operas that I don't like. Like
Sure, right.
there are things within classical music that I'm not into, but I was lucky enough to find what I was into, and it has become such a part of who I am to enjoy that I just want more people to feel like they have the welcome and the right to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think that has really informed how I have proceeded forward in my career. Once I got to a place where I really felt like I had the privilege of people wanting to hear my voice, then I kind of figured, well, now I have the responsibility to try and open those doors a little bit wider for the up and coming artists who are coming up. I personally believe that we have a tradition of there being a detriment of performers from different backgrounds, different cultures on stage. We need more. And we need more because I want the audience to feel seen. You know, whether I can't tell you the number of operas that I've been like a leading romantic character in. And I've gotten messages from young women who are also women of size who were like, I've never seen my love story told on stage until I saw you up there doing that. And that means the world to me, you know? So whether it be, for whatever reason, I want more people who help the audience at large feel seen being on
Yes.
stage. And so that's why I'm a loudmouth about this. That's why I won't shut up about it because it's too important.
Any advice that you might have for up and coming opera singers, people looking at you saying, wow, I'd love to have that career?
Oh, advice. I would say have courage. It's a tough time out there right now for burgeoning artists. It's always kind of a difficult time because, especially in the United States, our art form is literally nonprofit. So
Right.
we're no longer in the days of, the Pavarotti days of people making millions of dollars on concert tours in the 80s. Like we we don't have that anymore. So don't do it because you want to be famous. Don't do it because you want to be rich. Do it because you can't imagine yourself doing anything else and being happier.
Mm.
And then give it all you've got for a
Yeah.
certain amount of time. I tell people, I'm like, give yourself like 5 to 7 years, something, like out of grad school, if that feels good to you, whatever feels good to you.
Right.
But give yourself a time limit to go, okay, I'm going to give this everything. I'm going to give it my heart, my soul, my finances, my time, all of it for this amount of time. And then also go into that with an idea of what else you would want to do, because music can be for happy. It doesn't have to be the thing that pays your bills.
Mm.
I can tell you from being on this side of things, I love my career quite a bit. It is not the easiest career to have. And I have found that out along the way. And I'm still glad that I have it. And that's why I keep choosing it every day.
Sure.
But even I have like a short list of things that if I weren't to do this, say my voice just leapt out of my throat and
Sure.
disappeared.
Yeah.
I have a list of things that I would want to do that would make me happy and could be
Mm.
monetized. And, so I'm all about backup plans in life, not just in this career, but going into an industry like this where it's tough out there right now.
Mm.
Keep your interests and your plans diversified.
Mm.
And listen, you might be one of the ones who happen to get the luck.
Right.
I think luck is a very necessary part of breaking into this career. You can have the talent, you can do the work, do all of that stuff and then not get it in the
Yeah.
way that you wanted it. Had a lot of luck going into mine, and I also worked I also did the work, all of the things you can control.
Yeah.
That luck element is a necessary element, and sometimes it comes and other times it doesn't. And that doesn't mean that you can't still have music in your life.
Mm.
You can still go do things with smaller companies. You can still be a part of that choir that you really love in your town.
Yeah.
You can still decide, get together with a pianist and put on a recital. Like there are so many ways that you can utilize the training that you've come from, even in job situations, not even, like as a singer. I know so many of my friends and colleagues from Indiana University are no longer opera singers, but they certainly use their skills that they've learned
Mm.
in their variety of other jobs. And a lot of them still keep music for happy in their lives. So I would say, try it, go for it, give it all you've got, and don't blame yourself if the luck doesn't come,
Mm.
but be prepared, with an idea of how to proceed forward because you can always just do music to make yourself happy.
What a great message.